And guys, hey, welcome. It's Jeff from Home Renovation DIY here today to talk about basements. Very excited today. We're going to do a little more interactive program here today. We got a lot of information to cover. And let's just face it, to talk about how to plan something that's a major project, we're going to have all kinds of questions, right? So we're going to be jumping in questions all the time here. We'll take a bite and we'll answer questions because we got people from different geographies, different ages of homes, different designs, different plans, different functionality. Going to be a real busy show today. Hopefully it'll be fun. Cheers, guys. Christian's in the house. John made it today, which is awesome. TJ Existential Paint. Hey, welcome, guys. This is awesome. What would Jeff do in a basement is the question. Jeff likes to keep things simple. Why am I talking about myself in the third person? That's bizarre. We're going to talk today about function, design, plan, permits, okay? We're also going to deal with some of the more common problems that you guys are dealing with. And I know a lot of you are here. You're looking to do your basement this year. It's kind of like a wintertime project. And if you have a basement, it's because you live where you get wintertime. So it's kind of a good thing to have an indoor project for the winter. Great to see everybody here. We got Home Rapid Repairs back in the chat again. Cheers from all over the place. My goodness. This is going to be busy. Jane wants to know about recessed lighting. Good. I like that. It's a problem solved right there. Like we've been using it for years, but there's a lot of places you can use it. We'll talk real quick about lighting. Okay, that's not a bad idea. So first of all, let's deal with this, guys. Quick question for everybody that's in the chat right now. Akash, hey, cheers, buddy. Your functionality. That's really the number one thing, right? What are you going to use the basement for? Jump in the comment section. Let me know. All right. What's the purpose of the extra space? And let's face it, when you do this, you are increasing the actual living space in the home, increasing value. Now, you don't get the hugest return of investment when you do this. Like if you did an addition on your home, there's a larger return per square foot than doing your basement. And that's because they're prone to having water problems. So let me know what you're planning on doing. Are you looking to make a living space or a home office? Because there's all kinds of different issues to deal with when we're doing that. Let me just make sure that I am live in the chat. There we go. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Lots of folks here today. You're doing a chin. Okay, let's get into this. Man caves, kids' playroom, entertainment room, living space, walk-in shower. Yeah, laundry, unfortunately. Basement bathrooms, living space. And you know what? This is the common stuff, right? Somebody wants a home bar. All right. Some soundproofing issues, home theaters. Okay. Work, hangout. Yeah. Wow. Got it. That is great. Thanks for all of that. A second dwelling. Now that's really interesting. We are going to deal with the second dwelling a little later in the show. Okay. We'll talk about that briefly, some of the issues that you got to deal with. Let's jump in because the majority of you all are here because you're looking for extra living space. And that's awesome. It's also really good because when you're dealing with basements, because they are prone to problems, okay? Keeping it simple, getting that clean living space, clean and dry is really the main goal, okay? So let's just go right through the notes. I've also got a little bit of a drawing here, the basic rectangular basement. We're going to tackle that as well. Now, when it comes to functionality, here's my rule. Here's my brain, the way I think about it. I walk into a basement, and we'll just go through this real quick. Your stairs aren't going to be in the same place, right? But older houses have this a lot. They'll have a back door and an entrance, right? And then you go straight down the stairs. Now, these little circles here represent your structural posts. In a lot of cases, a 30 by 50 basement, you're going to have posts down the middle carrying the steel beam. You do not want to move that. Can you move it? Yes. The answer is always yes. It's about, does it make any sense? Is it practical, right? Because honestly, moving things like that, you get into structural engineer work. But the way you can keep it simple is you want to just think about your building envelope. And that is the perimeter, okay, of your whole basement. All right? That's your envelope. That's the building science side of things, okay? So we talk about our wall assemblies there. We talk about the age of home. Do we need to level off the floor a little bit? Are we using subfloor systems? How old is your house? If your house is brand new, then the outside of the house has got waterproofing on it, so you have a head start. If it's old, you're in a lot of trouble, right? But we got to deal with this kind of issue. We have a sewer line in front of the house, all right? And we have water supply Some folks are going to be living in a situation where you're on septic. And so you're going to have a 4-inch pipe coming down the wall and about 4 or 5 feet off the ground going straight across the wall. You're going to want to build a wall on the interior of that, and you're going to lose a little bit of space, and that's okay. Remember, you're finishing a basement. You're not trying to maximize your square footage to the square inch. Get that kind of mindset out of your head. It'll cause you a lot of trouble. Now, if you're just looking to finish your space, your process is simple, okay? You're going to do a thermal break. You're going to want to put in your rigid foam. You want to use a dab technique. So you don't just put a big S on it and squeeze it against the wall. What you want to do is create space for air to travel behind it, okay? Especially in your older houses. So you put a big dollop in 4 corners. You lightly press it against the wall. And you wait till it sets up, and then you can frame in front of it. You do a thermal break, you frame, you run your wiring, and it's really simple. Code is a plug every 10 feet from one plug to the next, all around the perimeter of the room, okay? And you can put up to 10 plugs on the same breaker, and that makes it nice and simple. Now, the minute you start throwing in a bedroom, you're in trouble. Or you want to go to wet bar, you got more problems, right? But the basic simplicity is if you're just looking for living space, you frame the outside of your walls, you throw in your electrical, all right? And that is it. Now your walls are taken care of. Your floor is simple. Let me know in the comment section, how old is your house? All right, and then we'll take care of a couple of little questions there. 20-year-old houses is a question of the waterproofed outside. It's really easy to see, guys. What you do is you go outside, take a look where the ground hits the house. Just dig the dirt an inch or two. And if you don't see the black membrane that's actually attached to the building, you don't have exterior waterproofing, okay? Not to the point where you can be confident you're never going to get water infiltration, because even if it's a roll-on membrane, they can crack, okay? Yeah, so a fair amount of older houses in the comments here today. This is nice. All right, it's all over the board. Let's just tackle this. Once you got your main space, okay, functionality requires this. Somewhere in here, you're going to have a furnace and a hot water tank, okay? What you want to do, encapsulate that, make that a mechanical room, unfinished space. Save your time and energy. Do not try to squeeze that in really tight. Now, if you need to, you can put a wall right up against most furnaces, because most building code only requires the furnace has clearance where you service it at the door, not all of the ductwork, okay? So you can cheat. You can actually build a wall right in front of a furnace and install a door to the furnace, not the room, just the furnace. And that way you can get your clearance. So what you do is you take the panel off, you read inside, it'll tell you about what's going on there. What the clearances are listed on the inside of the furnace door. So that's a great cheat. Now, once you've got that, now you got to figure out your living space, okay? You're working with posts. You're going to have things here. You want to do maybe a built-in, okay? That's a great place for a TV wall. Wherever you have your services, just a quick little door, you have access. Don't try to bury everything too hard. You're going to have an electrical panel somewhere. It's nice sometimes if you have an electrical panel, let's say it's over here, build out a little closet, 2 feet deep, put on a nice good door on there. Turn it into some kind of a place where you can store some stuff and have lots of access, not just to the panel, but the wiring coming in from the sides, okay? Make sure you got lots of space. And then if you're gonna do anything in the future, you don't have to tear everything apart to make room, okay? Not a bad plan. Now, all you've got to do from there is put in some flooring and a ceiling. Life is simple. That's function, okay? So when we're talking about function, that's what we're talking about. How to just get it done nice and simple. Now, before we get started, you're going to want to do an inspection, okay? And here's the things you're going to look for. And I want to go through this list real quick. You have got the possibility of water coming into your house. The older the house, the worse it gets. Right here at this pipe that goes from the city, okay? Older houses have a floor drain right in the middle of the room, all right? So if you've got an old floor drain like this in the middle of the room, you probably have a really bad slope as well. And so that slope can be dealt with by adding more concrete, okay, or floor leveler, which can be an expensive option. But you also have to deal with the fact that you do not have something called a backflow preventer valve. And basically what that is in the pipe, there's a little lid like this, okay? And as long as the water's going the right way, everything flows fine. But if the water comes the wrong way, it actually closes the lid over and shuts off the line to your house. So if they're doing pressure washing on the city sewer, you get back pressure. Or if you get too much of a rainstorm, you get back pressure. Lots of folks in Ottawa recently had floods in their basement due to that. Older houses, the water comes in and it's sharing the system with the sewer, so it's actually black water. So they got to tear everything out, and this is what happens. But you can put in a valve right here. It has a backflow preventer concept, and you just install it in the pipe, okay? So you can go to the store and check that out. It's basically about 2 inches thick. It's a big rubber gasket. You tighten the screws to force that rubber to seal it all off, and then it has a little stopper on it that's on a spring. And so if you have water from like a hot water tank or something that blows, it'll still go down. But if the water comes the other way, it closes it off. Now, it's not guaranteed. It's not heavy industrial strength. So if you have a real major problem, it's still going to blow right out of the pipe, but it solves a lot of the little leaks, okay? All right. Now, let's talk about, what's my list here? I got to stay on track. The design. Okay. Designing is really interesting. You've got to do a few things. Let's talk about the function of the space. You got a living room, right? You're going to be sitting down. Basements, generally speaking, are 10 degrees year round, unless you bring enough heat. So I'm a big fan on the channel. I tell you guys, bring your heat down the wall to the floor. If you can't do that, you might have your electrician install a electric little blower, okay? And you can create a new source of heat that blows across the living area that keeps your body temperature much more comfortable. When you're sitting down in 10 degrees, it's actually hypothermic. You're going to be in blankets. You're going to be miserable. You can't enjoy your space, right? So this is what happens. So if you are making a living space, consider insulating the floor. If you have little kids, all right, that's part of how to plan for your basement. Little thermal break with a R1.5 is really all it takes, okay? That way, when you bring that heat to the space, it stays comfortable. And then the little critters will have a warm floor, and they stay comfortable. All right, let's just jump into some comments here. We had some folks here talking about, let's do a separate living space. That's a really big deal. That's a completely different planning process, right? If you're not just doing a simple design, hello, Sandy, good to see you again. I'm glad you can make it. If you're doing a more complex design, like a separate living space, you've got to take a look at all kinds of new building code issues, okay? Remember, the basement that's built nowadays is designed to be finished, and the only code issue you have is the building code about how you finish your assemblies, all right? So you don't have anything fancy unless you add a bedroom. As soon as you add a bedroom, you open up the code, you need permit, okay? You've got to go there. But if you're doing a second living space, you've got to do fire separation. And that means that you need at least one layer of 5/8 drywall to separate one living space from the other living space in case of a fire. You've also got to take a look at how to do that fire separation, because you've got one furnace. And there's a lot of rules to that. There's rules relating to your plumbing. You've got to have donuts installed on your drain lines so that a fire can't get to the next unit through the plumbing. I know it happens. So there's all kinds of rules. The secret with that is, when you're planning a basement to do in that direction, make sure you have your building inspector come to the site before you start. And they will walk you through everything that they're expecting to see before you can get permission to do the next stage. Fire separation first, then you build inside that. So you have to build a new space for that unit, okay? It's very important. And there we go. Fran, here's a great question. What would you use to insulate the floor? Rigid foam, and the answer is no. Actually, we did a video not too long ago. We used a foam product on the floor. That was a very unique house. It sat high on a hill, all on sand, lots of drainage, and it had its own river, 30 feet lower than the bottom of that basement. So there was no risk of any issues there, and it was not connected to a city sewer system. Most people, I think, if you go taking a look at the dry core panels that have the insulation on the bottom, it also has a channel that allows a little airflow. That's a really, really great DIY project. Great place to start. Okay, so Fran, something like that is better, because then you get a subfloor and the insulation all in one. All right. Okay. Yeah. Sandy, we haven't seen Sandy in a couple of months, but that's all right. It's hard to make the show all the time, isn't it? All right. Let's talk about functionality now for if you want to put in any kind of plumbing, like a kitchenette or a wet bar or something like that. Your design plan for that is going to be a little bit more complicated. A lot of people, if you're connected to the city, okay, here we are now, we've got this pipe. And usually it'll come somewhere else in the room, okay, underneath the slab. So when we're building houses, we put in the plumbing first, and then we build the foundation and then the walls, okay? And then they pour the floor after. So what you have to do now is go backwards. You have to identify where is that pipe going. So if you have a big pipe over here, let's say, and it's sticking out of the floor, okay, you're going to see it'll have something like this, either straight or on a Y, okay, with a big square knob on it. That's a clean out, okay, so that you can actually take that off, throw an inspection camera in, have a look at your system. But that tells you from there to there is usually a straight run. And so you can assume that the pipe is right there. If there's a second one, then it might branch off somewhere else. You got to find out. So you bust your concrete, you dig it up. And if you want to put a bathroom, try to plan your bathroom to be in the neighborhood of where this pipe is going to be, right? Design the space to make your life simple. Because it's one thing to open up 4 or 5 feet of concrete and put in some plumbing. It's another thing to dig a 50-foot trench all the way across your basement. So, try to incorporate that. Now, yeah, let's get into the comments here again real quick. Here we go. Let's talk about design function now. Now, when you're designing your space, if you're looking for living space that's simple, you got to think about your traffic, okay? We're going to talk about this now. When you've got stairs that come down here, to get to here, you've got to have a lane. And you always think of it in the way of traffic, okay? So if you're going to put a couch right here in the middle and then a TV over the wall, you don't want to have everybody walking in front of the couch between the TV. So now you've got to have space on both sides and behind it, all right? And then whatever the destination is over here, that's a lot of extra traffic. So sometimes it's better, think about putting the TV here and the couch over here. So then you're already out of the way as soon as you come down, all right? So you want to really visualize that space, making sure that you reduce as much of the traffic flow as you can. Because wherever you have to have hallway, it's a lost space. It's wasted space. So if your stairs come down into the middle of the room, right, that makes it a lot simpler because now you can just 2 steps, 1 step, 2 steps. You're going to have 3 different zones you're functioning with hardly any hallway. But if you have stairs that come down one side into the corner, you've really got to be thinking really quick about how to make everything function here. It's nice if you can have 1 traffic lane and that's it. And you're not interrupting the line of sight on the TV because that drives people crazy. One other thing, if you're doing your income property, you've got to think about fire exit. You need 2. You got to have egress windows. You got to get permits. Everybody who's building their basement has to get a permit. That's basically, there's no way around that, okay? At least electrical, even if you're doing the wiring yourself, make sure that you are getting permits, guys. You've noticed a switch in the real estate market. 3 years ago, if you did a renovation and then you sold the house last year or 2 years ago, everyone was fighting over the property. Nobody was getting inspections. Nobody cared if you had a permit. But all of a sudden, you flick a switch, policies change, the environment's changed, and now if you don't have a permit for your renovation, no one's buying your house because they have 100 to choose from. Okay, so consider that. The markets do change. So always having a permit means no matter what the market condition is, you're taken care of and you're protecting your investment. All right. Oh, yeah, Chris here is talking about loving radiant heat in the basement floor. That is a really great idea. Let me try this one out. If you want to put radiant heat in, you've got 2 options. One, especially if it's a really old house, it's a great constant situation here because old houses have always got moisture coming through. And so it actually keeps things dry. And it also usually has a big slope. So if you add radiant heat tubing and then you pour over top of that, then you're encapsulating it and leveling your floor at the same time and creating that heat system. And so that is a really good plan. There is something about radiant heat, even if you have to go electrical, it's actually quite cost effective. Okay, guys, don't be thinking it's going to be like $1,000 a winter. It doesn't run that kind of power. So even if you're going to have like one living area, and if you've got, you know, young kids, you want to set up your living space so that they're hanging around you while you're watching your TV. You can kind of keep an eye on them. Having a heating system just in that area where they're going to be playing is a game changer. All right. And it's going to make sure that they're enjoying that space as well. Yeah, here we go. New kitchen and another floor. Again, if you're adding plumbing, you're going to be running new water lines. Whatever your old plumbing is, just switch to PEX B. You don't have to go to the modern PEX with the expansion. Okay, those tools are expensive. It's a new skill to learn. Crimping PEX is fine for long runs. You just run 3/4 everywhere, and then when you get down to the fixture that you're going to use, you can switch to the 1/2 inch to make the connection. It gives you much better flow rate, and it'll give you more water. Your drains are really the key, making sure that you've got a slope. So all drains have to have a 1 degree slope. So you don't want them level. You want them to have a little bit of a tilt. All right. And so that's the secret. Concrete in basement floors doesn't have rebar in it. It's not a structural concrete. So you can bust it up and you can do your pipes. And even if the pipe is going to be higher than the bottom of the concrete thickness, doesn't matter. Okay. 1 inch of concrete over top of that pipe is more than strong enough for foot traffic, and you're going to be just fine. Mitchell Thompson's got a question here. 1/2 inch drywall on basement steps, 5/8 everywhere else. That's not really a question as much as a comment. But here, you know what? 5/8 drywall is a lot more durable, and it eats a lot more sound. Okay, so let's quick talk about what if you're doing an office, or you're doing a bedroom, or you want to have a living space downstairs, but your kids are terrible, and you are looking for some soundproofing, right? Really simple. 2 layers of insulation bat in the floor joist works great. And then 2 layers of 5/8 drywall on the ceiling. Generally solves all your problems. That makes almost everything tolerable. If you want to go even more soundproof than that because you're doing an office, then what you want to do is consider adding resilient channel before you put your drywall up. Okay. And that goes another step, gives you a little more protection. And all of your walls, you really just want to try to avoid as many fasteners going from your walls into your ceiling as possible. So build all your walls, lock them all together, all right? And then when you go to put it in the ceiling, just do it in a couple of locations, all right? And use like a structural screw, something that'll hold up with a lot of shear strength. And the less screws that you're putting into the framing from one level to the next, the quieter it's going to be. All right, now let's just jump into some questions here. Well, look at that. I grabbed my mouse and boom, I jumped off for a second. Sorry, guys. I'm back. That's terrifying. That's one of the benefits of this studio here. My goodness. All right. We're going to talk. When you're asking your questions, guys, give me your age of your home and the location. It really does help. And we're back. Yeah, no problem. Let me just put this mouse where it's not going to cause me another trouble. That was awesome. All right. Yeah. Well, let's just talk about, drawing out your plan, because you're going to be needing a permit. Let's just talk about that real quick while everybody's coming back. Here we go. Yeah, Paul, I know technical difficulties, but we have a great studio that we're using, so it's easy to jump back on when we lose it. No big deal. When you're going to be drawing your drawings as a homeowner, when you're getting a permit, the building office is really easy to work with. Okay, like really easy to work with. Just get yourself like some grid paper. Mark off every square as a foot or 1/2 foot, depending on how big your basement is. It should be just fine, give or take. Like when you're doing all this stuff, right, and you're putting on your post locations, here's all you got to do to get a permit with the city. Okay, and we're going to make this as clean and simple. You got to have your basic size. You're going to put in post location estimations. You don't have to measure off and put numbers on, just the fact there's a post. You're going to want to put your furnace location in a square, your hot water location in a circle. Okay, that's what they're going to want to see. If you have a sump pit, put the S with a circle, sump pit, they'll know. All right, after that, they're just going to want to know about the stairs, and that's it. This is all the drawing that you need, unless you're adding other rooms, okay? So if you're putting in interior walls, they need to see that in the permit. So if your plan calls for an interior wall here, and they're going to call that an unfinished mechanical space, that's fine, all right? And then whatever else. If you're going to add a bathroom, okay, then you just have to put that's a shower, okay? This is drawing a toilet and the sink. You don't have to have dimensions. They just need to know the functionality, all right? When it comes to your electrical permit, it's a little different, okay? You're gonna have to do the math. Go and draw out every 10 feet where those plugs are gonna be, okay? And then you're gonna want a light switch. Well, you're gonna wanna put a switch here, okay? You're gonna want a switch down to the bottom of the stairs. You're gonna have to make that a three-way, of course, right? You're gonna maybe have another switch here for the lights in the room. And if you go with the pot lights, you can have up to 100 lights on one switch, so you're fine. They don't use hardly any power at all. Now, pot lights have a 1/2 inch thick body, but they have a box that's about 1 1/4 inches, okay? And so that has to get into the ceiling somewhere. So consider that. Sometimes, depending on how much ceiling height you're gonna try to, save or maintain, it's easy to just throw in strapping across your floor joist, run all your wire and all your boxes, and wire the boxes in advance, and then leave them all in location. Make yourself a map, all right? And you're gonna just put your little circles on your map, and you're gonna measure this number, and we'll call that 36, and we're gonna measure this number, we'll call that 36, okay? And then you're just gonna measure the gaps. Get a template, take a picture on your phone, because you're probably gonna lose that piece of paper at some point. All right, we all know that. Oh, that's a really good question here. Yeah, Angel. I'm going to throw that one up. Here we go. Jeff, my basement have block walls and concrete floors. Water and moisture are getting on the basement. Wet floors, any solutions? Water is dropping near the house. The house is 30 years old in Pennsylvania. Yeah, this is a real common issue. Finishing your basement is one thing, but having a basement that can be finished, in some cases, a completely different beast, right? So if you have an older house, and I mean like anything more than 20 years ago, you're going to potentially have water issues. So what you've got are, let's just do it this way. Let's pretend this is the wall coming out of the ground from the basement, okay? And then somewhere around here, you're going to have ground. You need to have that sloped away, okay? Because most houses do not have a waterproofing membrane on the outside of the house here, okay? They don't have that. And so that one means you get water coming down. And down at the bottom here, your concrete is actually poured a little bit differently. They have a footing that's nice and big, and then they have a wall that goes on top of it, okay? And then they pour the concrete. This is a lot of drawing to put in one little spot here, isn't it? But I get the idea. If you don't have a waterproofing and you don't have this slope, then the water travels here. This is a cold joint, all right? And that water will actually go right underneath the wall on top of the footing, because they don't do anything to waterproof that joint. So if water gets there, you're in trouble. Now, older houses have clay tile, like on a roof house, okay? Clay roof tiles, but for the foundation. And that's to move the water away. But it does a really bad job, and over time, they end up collapsing and breaking. And so you'll have all the sag. New home construction, they put in waterproofing, but they're really bad with the backfill, so you won't get this slope, all right? And so that's another issue. But if you have water problems and you have an older house and they don't have a vapor barrier under the floor, which is really common, then you've got to do all kinds of water management techniques to get ready before you can finish. So what you do is you take garbage bag, you tape it on your floor, okay? You do the garbage bag test. If it collects moisture overnight, then you don't have a vapor barrier underneath your concrete. And that's one of the most common problems. And if you don't, then you've got to design your floor system and your wall system to constantly have air moving so you can move that relative humidity out of the building, all right? We've got a video on that. Basically is my basement finishing system, okay? So you can check our site for that as well. We're probably going to throw a link into this video description after tonight's over. Okay, so you can always come back and use this as a resource. But water is a killer. If you have wet basement, you've got to find a way to dry it out, because you can't just use a system to build in a wet bucket. Okay, it's always going to go to mold. So you got to find a way to dry it out. One of the ways you can help dry out your house is get your slope, get downspouts, get the water moving more than 4 feet away, because water travels on an angle, 45 degrees. And so if you have 4 feet from the ground to the bottom, your spout should be 4 feet at least going downhill, running away from your building. Okay, that'll help with the rainwater. And if you live in a really wet area and you don't have the luxury of creating lots of slope, then what you should do is you should trench this out. Okay, let me just draw that. Yeah, here you go. Here's your ground. Trench this out. Okay, line this with a like a product, like a landscaping cloth, but there's a geotextile cloth. That's what I'm looking for. And you can run a pipe in here that's got holes in it on top of the cloth and cover all this in gravel, clean stone. Okay, leave it as clean stone. It's called a French drain. And you can run that around the entire perimeter of the house to a place where you do have slope, and then bring it out that slope and get that water away from your building so it's not coming down your walls. At least then the only thing you're dealing with is the ground level water. And if you have a high water table, then you've got to put in that sump pit. Okay, that basically is going to put a pump 3 feet below your concrete and make sure the water never gets that high. And that'll keep your basement dry. And then once you've got it dry-ish, then you can use the wall assembly and floor assemblies to isolate whatever relative humidity is still working its way through, because the concrete's in contact with soil in a lot of cases. And then you'll be able to manage that. Managing water is one thing, but solving a lot of the problems is another thing, okay? Remember, guys, in a basement, if you have 60% relative humidity or lower, you're fine. You hit 65, you start getting water building up on condensing surfaces like windows and sheet metal and ductwork, okay? And then when you hit 70, it's so wet that everything just goes to mold. You can't stop it. So there's a small window. From 60 to 70% is a huge issue, all right? So some of these issues that we can deal with, the mitigation issues, can really dramatically affect where, if you're 66 or 65 or even 59. Just doing some of those modern techniques on old buildings will get you there. So make sure that you got your relative humidity in check before you start to build. That's part of the planning system, okay? Here we got a question. Member for 12 months. I've been talking an awful lot. My goodness. Jeffy's got a 1938 duplex. Great. Previously, basement unit has 7-foot ceilings. Upper unit has 9 foot. Would reclaiming 1 foot from the upper be worth it? Here's the thing. You want to do renovations practically. Now, for everybody out there who's got a short ceiling, it's not the end of the world. It's called charm. It's just charming, okay? You're not 7 feet tall. And if you are, buy a house where you can actually fit in it. But most people do not need more than 7 feet in ceiling, okay? I've been in lots of basements, even underpinning, trying to scoop out and drop your house. That is a major problem. It's a major problem. You don't know where your water table is. You don't know how the house is going to handle being lower. It's just never worth it, okay? It's a 1938. You get what you get. Yeah, and so there you go. Sandy's mentioning here, once the mold starts, it's hard to get rid of it. It is. Like once it gets there, you're done. Don't forget, the mold is in the wood that you're putting in your basement to build your walls. Comes out of the forest from the ground, okay? So the water that it takes out of the dirt has mold in it. It's part of what's going on out there. And you're bringing it in the house as soon as you start building. So you've got to maintain that relative humidity or your basement is going to be shot before you even start. So good planning involves understanding the weaknesses in your home, which of course is one of the reasons why you should become a member before you take on a major project like this. Hit the join button, join our crew, okay? You can send me questions about your house all day long, and we can help you to make sure that you're prepared before you get started. But relative humidity is really your biggest issue. All right. Now, What else do we want to talk about here? Matt, why don't you go and grab me some member questions here, and we'll see if we can spark up some more problems that we can solve for folks. Oh, there he is, right on the money. Hey, the bare bones. We got a quote for an egress window. Okay. Now, what we're talking about here is for basements, when you add a bedroom, code requires a fire escape for whoever's sleeping in that room. And I'm going to tell you this because it's true. If you don't have a closet, it's just another room. It's not a bedroom. Okay. Just saying, you know, if you want to risk whoever's in that room life and limb, you can add a room and put a bed in it. It's not a bedroom if there's no closet. Remember, your inspections all get passed long before you move your furniture in. That is the secret. One of the companies indicated that our 10-year-old house's longest basement wall was leaning in ½ inch at the center. What would I do? Well, ½ inch at the center is a bow, not a lean. Now, if you have a block wall, let's deal with that. Block wall foundations, okay? And everybody, there's three, but there's two major kinds. One is block wall. And you stack those blocks on top of each other, all right? But here's what happens. Where'd my thing go here? When you have a wall, let's call this the basement wall again, and you have your ground, and you have moisture, and you have freeze thaw. Where is that frost happening? The first couple feet, Wisconsin, probably down to 4 feet in the wintertime. All right. So now this part of the dirt is wet and it has to expand, but it's a block of ice. Now, expansion inwards is easiest. And so then this wall ends up bowing. Okay. That's the dramatic bow, by the way. ½ inch is pretty normal. Now, if it's solid concrete and you're not cracking, it's not a big issue. And we'll tell about how to deal with that in a minute. If it's a block wall, you do have a big issue because blocks will start to crack and all other joints. And then it'll just collapse right there. These are structural walls. They're carrying your house. You can't afford to have a problem here. So what they have is a system that actually gets bolted to the concrete floor, and it's a steel I-beam kind of looking piece here. It attaches to your floor joist, and then it puts the pressure right here to resist the frost. So it has to find a different way to go. And it's going to stabilize using the building strength to stabilize itself so it doesn't move any further, okay? You can't fix it. You can just stop it from getting worse. And then when you're building your house, your interior finish, you go on the inside of this to frame, okay? You've lost a fair chunk of space, but the real estate ain't worth it. You can't insulate that properly any other way. And that's a condensing surface, right? So you just want to make sure your wall is inside of that, and then you'll be okay. Yeah, a crack is a relief line. Yeah, get the crack fixed as well, but get one of the engineers in. Go look at this product. Okay, you want to contact the structural engineer and have them design a solution that's just perfect for your house and your soil conditions and your weather. All right, that's always the secret. Structural engineers, whenever you got a structural problem, don't even try to DIY that. All right. Oh, all right. Aldermere, member for 6 months. Cheers, buddy. 1992, Central Maine. Foundation walls are not sealed. Basement has thin gaps along the sides, maybe French drains. What are some other options? Okay, so your house is 92. It's in pretty decent shape. Foundation walls are not sealed. Okay, first of all, before I came on the show tonight, I did a bunch of searching through videos, what the recommendations are that are out there. There is one company in one of their videos that's recommending that you seal your concrete walls. That's malarkey. All right, get all that out of your head. That's just an excuse to sell more product. They're gonna snag another few $100 out of your build. Okay, so just don't bother with that. There's nothing wrong with having concrete that moisture can travel through. Okay, if you seal a wall, then you're admitting that you have a moisture problem. That seal is not going to last as long as you want that basement to. So you haven't solved the problem. You've just postponed a problem. And whatever you build in there, if you have a moisture problem, it's still going to be destroyed. Now, so sealing it is not your solution. Your solution is figuring out how to keep it dry, right? So your solution is possibly trenching and waterproofing the outside of your house, or doing an interior French drain and waterproofing the inside of the house. So you can isolate the moisture problem from your living space and your living finishing. Those are really the only two options that you got. All right, let's go talk about some other common problems. And Matt, if you got some more members' questions there that we want to bring up, then go right ahead. I'm down here in Florida working on my trailer again, and Matt's at home back in Ottawa, and he's helping us out tonight. Joe has a question here. Northeast U.S. 1950s basement. Okay, I'm assuming the outside concrete block is not treated with moisture barrier. If I was to finish it, how to treat the block behind the framed walls on the interior? Okay. Yeah, Joe, that's a great question. We're going to deal with this. I can always draw a new basement. I think I need a better whiteboard for this one. Okay, here we go. Here's your wall. Here's your dirt. Okay. Your house is going to be built, should be a 3-inch slab, maybe 4. Should have a little bit of gravel and then dirt. Okay. Does that make sense? Underneath. The outside wall, however, this is just soil. Northeast, you're probably dealing with clay. I can't tell you for sure, but here's the issue. The moisture level in dirt is higher than what this concrete can move to the outside. So there's a wicking process. All right. I'll do it this way. This will be easier for everybody to understand. All right. So here we got drops of water, right? We got a lot of water here. This water, contact with the concrete. All right. Water wants to now go, okay, this is wetter than the concrete, so it's attracted into the concrete, and the concrete will absorb it. All right. Now, it won't go down here because there's no vapor barrier under here, and the water that's here is being transferred into the concrete as well. So these are relatively the same levels of moisture. All right. So now we're talking about relative humidity, relative moisture content. So what it does is it goes, all right, it's dry here, I'll travel this way. And it's drier here, so it'll travel this way. Now, when it gets up to here, everybody knows outside the house, all right, this is where your floor is, and you're going to have your vinyl siding or whatever. This area of the concrete, now the moisture can dry into the air. That's how it's traveling. Now, there's one other place, and it's your house. Relative humidity. Okay? Now, this is why they try to tell you should seal the inside of your wall. If you have this issue going on, then you can create a temporary block, a temporary barrier, so that the moisture can't travel into here. So when you're let's call it, we're 60%. Okay, that's relatively dry. So now this concrete will come into that space, and this moisture will come into that space, and now you're 70%. All right. Now, you have floor joists up here, and then you have the outside of the building. So this relative humidity now is passing upstairs into your home, up your staircase, traveling into your framing, traveling into your flooring. All right? And so you've got this constant cycle of water leaving and coming into your home and escaping. And so if all you do is put a temporary barrier here, okay, that's good. Now it's not coming into the house. We add a subfloor. We're not coming into the house. We get this back down to where it should be, right? Now we're down to 60% again, okay? And then you go and you build, and you build, and you build, and you build. Now, the day that moisture barrier that's painted on fails, give it 5 years or so, you're going to have all of this going right into your wood. Your insulation is going to start to fail. You're going to get all moldy, and then that's going to be right back up to this. Right back up to 70% again. All right? So, the only thing that you can do is open up the concrete down here, okay? Bust it out, put in a French drain that goes around the whole perimeter of the house, goes into a sump pit with a pump, and then it expels the water out. Or you can even tie this into your lateral if you're a city water sewer. Okay, so you can have that go right to the city. Okay, that's another thing you can do. The other option, of course, if you don't want to open up your floor and put in a pump, and then what you do is you put the vapor barrier here, and that separates the water from ever coming into this airspace forever. Okay, it's expensive, guys. Older houses were not designed to be having finished basements in them. Okay, that's just the way it is. So if you want to finish an old house, the first thing you got to realize is that somewhere around 1,500 footprint, okay, a 30 by 50, you're looking probably nowadays in the market 20 to 25,000 right off the top without even thinking about it, a cost to put in water mitigation processes, either trenching around the outside of the house or doing the French drain on the inside. Costs can be affected by soil conditions, time of year. Do you have decks and concrete patios and all that other stuff outside? And then then you go to the inside. But then some people don't want to lose a couple of inches. So, but those are the answers. Okay, that's how you deal with that. But you cannot finish a basement until you've solved that water impregnation into the air problem. It's always going to be there until you fix it once and for all. All right. Whew. Now, let's get into some other questions here. I see Jason Pereira here. In 1960s Toronto home. How do I insulate from the basement framing to the rim joist continuously? You can't. But you can do a really good job. All right. Let's just draw this out here. Here's the top of my concrete wall. Okay. Here's a floor joist sitting on a sill plate. My bad. All right. And then you've got your subfloor. That's a floor joist cavity. This is exposed to the outside wall. Now, a lot of people will just, they'll throw in their bad insulation in here, okay? And they're going to get an R value somewhere around R12, right? Or they'll get it up to 20 if they put a thick enough bat, right? But here's the thing. It's a lousy air seal. And one of the things we're trying to do nowadays is stop the drafts. So what you do instead is you cut a piece of rigid foam that fits that space pretty darn good. Okay? Pretty darn good. And then you take expansion foam and you fill all those 4 gaps all the way around. And then you put your bat. Okay? That gives you an air seal. The other way you can do it is you can do flash and bat. And that is literally where you go to the store, you buy a froth pack. Okay? And it's 2 canisters, it's a mixing agent, and it gives you the hoses and the little gun, and you can spray to seal the floor joist to the exterior board, your exterior board to your sill plate, the next floor joist, and then to your subfloor. It's like a 2-inch little bead of spray foam. It's a closed cell foam. That'll stop moisture transfer and air leakage, and then you throw in your bats, okay? And that's the system. Okay, here we go. Someone wants to know, is this really live? Yep, it sure is. All right. Let's go. Matt, I'm going to leave it up to you to find me another question here, buddy. Burton, do you recommend epoxy floor versus vinyl floor for your basement? Epoxy works great if it's dry. Okay, so if you have a newer technology where they got the vapor barrier and you don't have constant moisture coming through, painting or epoxy works great. But if you have a basement and you do the garbage bag test and you find water, just remember this. That water is constantly trying to come into the space. And the paint is going to just end up bubbling and collecting moisture, whatever kind you use. Epoxy loses against water every time. So if it's not dry, don't paint it. There we go. I got to grab a drink here, guys. Yeah, am I still rehabbing the home here in Florida? You bet your bottom dollar I am. I'm here for another couple of months. And then I'm finishing off my my work visa and heading back home. Here we go. Wow. Someone's got a house that's 100 years old. When it's that old, it's just a cellar. Anything more than 100 years, forget about it. It's not even worth trying to turn into living space. You're better off with older houses like that. You're usually in a neighborhood where you've got some dirt, you've got some yard. Do an addition on your house. It's a lot cheaper. Like when you get into real old building technology, adding an addition on your house for that extra living space is cheaper, and it gets you a bigger return on your investment than a basement does. All right. And most people won't do a basement right when they find out all the things that they've got to do to make it work. It just gets out of control with the cost. Anyway, I wanted to show you this because here's another one of these common problems. We're going to throw that map of the basement back up here again, okay? This area right here. When the stairs are coming right up against the concrete wall, Jeff, what do you do? This is a real issue, guys, all right? For everybody who's got a house, like a bungalow built in before 1974, they always put the stairs up against the concrete, and they never finished the walls. They never framed it. They never insulated it. A lot of people would put a little styrofoam on there, some strapping, and some, a little tiki bar in the basement because everything went paneling. But the problem with here is, in today's building code, we have to insulate that wall. And so a lot of people have been asking, how do we solve this problem? Okay, and here it is. I'm going to get this drawn a little bit cleaner. You have a landing that's barely code compliant. You've got a staircase, okay? And the stairs go right up to the concrete. Now, when you're dealing with your inspector, you're going to learn this. Stairs that don't get touched are grandfathered in. They're automatically a part of the building permit approval process. You don't have to worry about that. So if you take them off and try to move them over or cut them down, now you're not grandfathered in. Now you've got to make these code compliant. So you've got a width issue that you've got to make them a minimum size. You're not going to meet that because they're already the minimum size. You've got a wall here. So you're going to have to tear apart a good chunk of your main floor to then make your landing bigger to then move your stairs here. Okay. Well, that's a really expensive option. I just wanted to put, a little insulation into my basement, Jeff. What is my other option? Here's how you do this, guys. Okay. You leave the stairs alone. You're going to either paint them or you're going to put carpet on them. All right. I prefer carpet. And around the staircase, up against this wall, here's your new wall assembly. Okay. You got stairs. There's your floor. Okay. Here's what we do. Up against that wall. We're going to put rigid foam panels. We're going to cut the foam the same size as the stairs. Okay. And we're going to install that all the way to the ground in 4-foot wide sheets. All right. And you're going to attach it to the wall with a dab of PL 200. Okay. Or Loctite 200, I think is down in the States. So you put a dab here and a dab here and a dab here and a dab here, and that's it. And you leave that airspace because it's an old house. You want to have that air traveling. Okay. You do the same thing underneath the stairs from the other side, from under here. Rigid foam. All right. This is not a place where we're worried about becoming 100% efficient. It's a place that we're worried about trying to create a thermal break. All right. And being inefficient, but we need a thermal break. So use the rigid foam. And then what you do is you attach your drywall to the rigid foam the next day. And you use the same construction adhesive to do that. And you can throw on a few dabs. Now here, you want to put a dab every 16 inches on your drywall. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. You stick it on, and then you take a couple of Tapcon screws, you pre-drill a hole, you stick a screw here and a screw here, and maybe one up top if you need to. And if the wall's got a bit of a warp, maybe throw one in the bottom. And you can stitch your drywall sheets together like that with a couple of Tapcons. Now, the next day when everything is dry, you take the Tapcons out, you throw them away, you don't need them, okay? Or you can drive them all the way flush, and then you tape it like any other drywall job. Then you take your carpet and it covers all those gaps. You don't have to be fancy there. It's going to be a little drafty in the wintertime on the stairs, but not terrible. And that's how you finish it without having to tear it apart, rebuild your whole house. This gives you a really, really efficient system because the stairs are like a cold air return for the main floor, unless there's a door at the top. And now that you're bringing extra heat down here, right, this actually becomes a warm space because there's air movement. And as long as there's air movement and there's heat in the basement, the stairs are going to be fine. But that's how you finish that off so that you don't create a mold trap here. If you put the drywall right on the concrete, you're in trouble. It's going to get the moisture out of the concrete and it's going to soak it up, okay? The rigid foam is necessary, just 1 inch. It's a thermal break and it's a moisture barrier. And so then the drywall never goes bad. All right. Here we go. Matt, you got another good question for me, buddy? I haven't been looking at the chat while I'm drawing all that stuff out. Okay, Mr. E. Lee, 1959 brick cape south of Pittsburgh has French drain and sump pit. Got you. Okay, after finding and replacing failed cast iron drain lines under the concrete, the sump has not run. Any guess what the sump pumped? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that I know exactly what it pumped. I actually had a house that had a sewer line and a manhole cover in the backyard. And it was behind an apartment building. And it fell off the map from the city from the 60s, and nobody serviced that. And so one day we're in the basement, and the little drain that was in the floor, we noticed water was coming from around that drain, and it's going right down the drain, right where the fitting was. Water was actually strong enough that it forced its way between the concrete. And it got worse and worse and worse to the point where it's like we started to see the basement floor buckling, and then it was starting to have little fissure cracks in it. And it was like, oh, wow, our basement is actually sitting in a bucket of water right now, and there's a lot of water pressure. So I went over with a pickaxe, and I busted a hole next to the drain, and it was just a fountain. And we saw corn, and we saw carrots, and you betcha. So that's how we found out about the problem. It took the city a couple of weeks to find out what was going on. In the meantime, the house was flooded out. It was nasty. But yeah, that's the real thing. These things do happen. That's why when you're dealing with basements, having a simple plan is always a great plan. Because then if you do have a major problem, your investment is really reduced. You're losing your flooring. You're losing a couple feet of drywall. Everything else can be repaired, dried out, cleaned up, and then reinstated. Try to keep your basement as simple as possible. I know it's attractive to turn into a sexy extension of the house, but it's a basement, for God's sake. And there is at least 150 different ways that happen to folks every day that destroy those spaces that they didn't see coming. Because you can't anticipate all of life, right? And it's just the way it's going to be. So, oh my goodness. Anyway, let's get to another question. We got a couple minutes left. Let me just mention this, guys. Next week, we're doing something different. We're doing a Work With Me Live, okay? 2 o'clock. From 2 o'clock, and probably until that is done, it might be 3 or 4 hours. I'm going to be doing a tile project in my office. I'm going to have multiple cameras set up and TV screens so I can read comments. We're going to interact. We're going to teach you guys how to do flooring tile the old-fashioned way, like as if you're sitting there on the job with me getting trained, okay? I think it's going to be a really good video, and I'm going to be able to answer all the questions that you have as we go along, okay? So I'll do a step. We'll answer questions. I'm not going to be in a hurry to get the project done. What I'm going to be in a hurry is to get the right training so that you guys can do your own floor tile. Because once you master the floor tile program, you'll never be afraid of tile ever again. Now, we're going to have the camera set up outside of my carport. And that's where my cutting tools are going to be. So we're going to go through all that process. We're going to mix the cement live, and we're going to talk about all these kind of products and processes. And we're going to hang out and do some work. And so that'll be great. And like always, if you're part of our membership program and you got questions, we're going to do our best to be able to answer those questions for you. Like right here, I got Mickey 6. No basements here in South Texas. Don't need an indoor swimming pool. Yeah. You know, it's funny because basements originally were not designed to be living spaces. They were designed, let's just get this math understood, okay? They were designed because the frost line is 4 feet below the ground. So you got 2 feet here plus 4 feet, right? There's only a couple of feet. We put basements deep enough so that all of the plumbing, all of the plumbing pipes in our house can go underneath our concrete walls, travel to the city, because the city sewers are buried 10 to 12 feet deep as well, okay? And that is the program, so that our plumbing doesn't freeze. That is a thing from the north. And that's why you don't need basements in the south, because you don't have that kind of problem. Some areas in the south, recently in Texas, a couple years ago in February, they had a freeze where their water lines and everything are right at the ground level coming into their house to slab on grade, and they found out that that was a problem. When you lose power, water freezes. Anyway, thanks for joining us today, guys. If you have any more questions, just get back in this video, ask questions in the comment section. I'll do my best to help you out. And if you're a member, then just jump on our membership forum. I'm almost caught up, so I've been traveling a few weeks, so it's been a little hectic. And I'm nursing my wife now. She broke her foot, unfortunately. So there's a lot going on in our world. Yeah. One quick question here. Barry is asking me, anything special you'd have to do if you're on septic and the main drain out is above grade? Right here. Okay. Yeah. This is design. Okay. So let's just talk about that real quick, and then we'll call it a day. Here's your wall. Here's this, right? Here's your dirt. And then in this case, the septic is leaving down here somewhere, right? All right. And it's not coming down. In a lot of cases, it's like slope along an entire wall. Generally, these pipes in your basement design, you can go all the way back to where they come through the ceiling. And then you really want to reconfigure how that pipe does the slope to that location and keep it tight to the walls or in the ceiling. Because one of the easiest ways to solve this problem is if you're looking at your room from above, okay, you can build out a bulkhead all around the room, which is what we did in our last basement series, because it's exactly how we dealt with it. And so all your plumbing can fit in that bulkhead. And then it has a drop down, that one spot right here. It drops down, okay? And you can build furniture. Do like a cabinet or it's also a great spot to build a little closet. So somewhere where you've got access, because you have to have access to the clean out. Every time the plumbing leaves the building, you got to have a clean out there, because life happens, right? I've had my clean out freeze before, and you have to get in there with a hot water hose, high pressure jet, and you have to force your way through that block of ice. And then, of course, you have to clean up the mess on the inside too. So lots of fun. There we go. Well, that's it for us today. Cheers, everybody, for joining us. Cheers to all the members who were joining us today. Great questions. Appreciate that. It was a good, enjoyable time. I will see you next week live while we tile, and we're going to have a lot of fun. All right. Thanks a lot for watching us. Cheers to next time.